Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by John. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. John, before we dive into the subject, let's get to know you a little bit. So I always ask two questions. Number one, what do you love about marketing and what do you love about content? And then on top of that, let's get to know your background a little bit and get to know you.
Sure. So I am mostly a content person. I've been working at publications and media companies for most of my career, which is about 35 years now. I love telling stories, visual storytelling, and just sort of like, bringing ideas to life visually. My career has been mostly, I did most of the first half of my career in magazine publications. So I worked at places like Entertainment Weekly and GQ and Premiere Magazine, which is no longer there. And then I worked at Fortune Magazine. And then I sort of transitioned into digital content when I went to ESPN, oversaw product design and content design at ESPN, led a lot of the branding throughout the digital product world in ESPN, and a lot of the product changes that were made. We worked on all the fantasy football apps and the video apps and the scores apps and redid the website and things like that. And now I'm at Harvard Business Review here outside of Boston, doing a lot of the things that I've done at other places in this sort of wonderful kind of oasis of content and ideas out here.
I love it. So today we're going to have an interesting discussion, and really it's just a discussion. It's about AI, content creation, where it plays a role, where it doesn't, where humans need to get involved. And really, again, the whole point of this conversation is maybe just thinking about AI a little bit differently, coming up with some new opportunities, and maybe trying some new things. So to kick it off, John, you recently went through a whole exercise where you had to use AI to specifically create, it sounds like a new business. Tell us, how did that go? How did you use the tool? What was that for? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so we spent a few days at the executive education campus at Harvard Business School doing some leadership training. One of the exercises we went through was to create a new snack brand. So from soup to nuts, like what is the brand? Why are you creating it a certain way? How will you market it? And we used ChatGPT 4, which I think is the more recent version of it, which has image creation capability in it. And we were given a pretty tight time frame. We had to do it in about an hour. And in that hour, we were able to create a name and logo, define a market segment, figure out how to target that market segment. We optimized our recipes for cost savings. We created marketing language. We wrote jingles. We created video. We asked ChatGPT to evaluate its own work, to summarize its own work, to create a pitch deck. And so just from doing that, you can see the power of the tool. So some of the things we learned is that you can move very quickly. You can ideate very quickly. You can see lots and lots of options very quickly. You still need humans at the end of that process or throughout that process to come up with prompts to figure out what to ask, what questions to ask, and how to drive the AI. And then at the end of it, you need to decide whether what you have received or what's in front of you is actually usable. It's a powerful tool. It's clearly going to shape how we think and design and create going forward. But it's also imperfect in many ways. So there's a lot of things that it doesn't do well. There's a lot of pieces of this that, you probably wouldn't use. Like any other tool, it sort of helps you figure out, what is that sweet spot? How do you take what it's giving you and then apply it to what's real? I think about it like, I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Google showed up, and it took people a long time to stop asking people questions. Like I would say, hey, what is the best way to create sort of a silhouette effect in Photoshop? And people would start to email me back and say, Google. And so it just takes your brain a while to figure that out. I remember when my kids were young, I would think I'd want to go buy them something, and I'd still think I have to go to the mall and find it. I have to go to the brick and mortar to find it. And it takes you a while to realize, I can just get this on Amazon. So what is AI going to change about the way we think? I'm not sure, but the best way for us to figure that out is just to use it every day. So we're using Midjourney a lot for image ideation and image creation because I work in, the creative content side of things. We're actually using the image tools in Copilot. We're using the image tools in Adobe and Firefly. So a lot of it is very close to being consumer ready, but a lot of it is sort of questionable. Some of it, you can't really manipulate the images to the extent that you might want to, but we're learning how to think about AI first. So before we go down the traditional path of problem solving, can we use AI to sort of start this process? And I think that's important because, 10 years from now, the new generation or the next generation of problem solvers, this will be intuitive to them. They'll think about this, like it's second nature. So I just think that it's going to change the way we approach problem solving in general.
I love it. I think those are great insights. So a few follow-up questions. First of all, what snack food did you come up with? And are we going to see it on the shelves anytime soon? Like, I'm fascinated by this.
I don't think you're going to see it on the shelves anytime soon. We came up with a popcorn-based chip because popcorn is sort of ubiquitous. I originally wanted it to have a nutritional yeast flavor because my daughter is really big into nutritional yeast. And then I was shot down by my other team members because it didn't sound very shelf sexy, I guess. And so I think we had sort of traditional flavors, but we actually do focus grouping a lot here, and you can set up virtual focus groups in AI, sort of feed it your subscriber information or your market information, and it'll create a virtual focus group for you. And you can sort of pretend that that's, the focus group, and you can get some feedback that way. I think our chip would have done okay. Like, I think it told us that we should market it mostly in Colorado and the Southwest. So,
okay. Very cool. I love that. You talked a lot about these image AI tools and really how they're getting close to production ready, but they have some shortcomings, things like that. What are you using them for specifically, and how far do you take them? Where does the AI stop and where do humans pick up? Is it purely for the ideation? Are you actually using some of the imagery and publishing that? How do you kind of look at that right now? And where do you think AI needs to go before you really feel like it can be the entire process for imagery?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we do some basic image manipulation within Adobe and Firefly. So just sort of extending backgrounds to fit aspect ratios or, filling in sort of blank spots and things like that. Nothing that kind of messes with the content or the perception. When it comes to things like Midjourney, where we are creating images from scratch, we're using it almost exclusively for ideation. So we do a lot of business metaphor imagery here. So if you can, remember the poster on the wall that says leadership and it's the geese flying in a V or something. So we do a lot of images that are kind of like that. So we will feed into it this, a problem we're trying to solve with an image. We will get back a lot of different ways that image might work. But then we will use that mostly to sort of discuss it internally. Sometimes we'll focus group that if the image is clean enough. And we will almost always revert back to a traditional method of execution. So if I see, if we have this idea is actually working pretty well, I think it makes a lot of sense, I'll then sort of call a photographer, talk to an illustrator, or talk to an artist and say, this is sort of where we think this idea could go. A, can you kind of take this and run with it? Or B, do you want to add something to the mix? Like, do you have another idea or something else? So right now it's mostly behind the scenes ideation. And there are some legal issues around Midjourney because it's pulling images that are unlicensed from the internet versus, say, Adobe or Getty Images, which have their own AI image generation tools that are licensed imagery. So we're being really careful about that. We're not trying to sort of mess around with someone's IP. We would never sort of say, hey, can you create an image in the style of this artist? Because that really sort of goes against our ethos. But it's, it's a powerful tool. I've actually, I see it a lot. Like I've seen it, like you're watching a local newscast and you'll see it behind the anchor person as the image in the background. And you can tell like, oh, somebody just threw that together really fast. I see it a lot in kind of run of site ads or sort of kind of cheap ads that you'll see on the internet. Like people are using it. It's not going away. We're trying to be responsible in how we use it. And, we're trying to make sure that we're not sort of in the dark around the technology, but we're also being careful about it.
And I think that's a great way to approach it, a very educated way of really respecting the art of the imagery and the individuals behind that. And so I think that that's a great process. And I think as businesses continue to evolve and the technology evolves, really being understanding of where does this source material coming from? What's the best way to use this? How do we keep the, everything on brand and the originality up to date and all of this? So I think that that's really powerful and really beneficial for the business. So I love the approach there.
Thanks. Yeah. And I want to say, like, we are really conscious about, what images or what stylistic imagery we're seeing. I have a lot of friends who are artists who are actually using it, feeding their own work into it and getting new images out of it using their own styles, which I think is fascinating. Like, so artists are using it as a tool, and we absolutely are not interested in sort of co-opting styles or impinging on someone else's IP. But I think eventually when these tools become ubiquitous, I think I said this to you earlier, like if everybody has this capability, then it's possible, ironically, that the person who goes back in and actually hand does something might have the advantage. So we summarize our own stories all the time. And we've done that curated by editors in the past. And, we could probably be doing that with AI now. But I think in the future, the person with the competitive advantage might be the person who actually reads the whole story. Because everybody else will be reading the summary. So, I think it'll be cyclical. We'll see it, where it goes from here.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I know nowadays people have all this crazy technology to create handwritten notes that you can send in the mail, because getting a handwritten note is such a novel thing that someone would take the time and effort to do that when, not too long ago, that was just a normal element of what we were doing. So I do agree with the cyclical nature of everything going on. I'm curious, when you went through this training exercise and created what will be the world's next greatest potato chip popcorn mixture, where did you feel like the AI really shocked you that it was really powerful and really helpful? And where do you feel like AI didn't quite do that much, where you felt like you had to pick up more of that effort on your side of things?
I was impressed with how quickly it could generate a video and create a jingle, like sort of create those sort of traditional analog marketing elements. And they weren't perfect, but they were impressive. When it came to naming the product, ultimately, we would ask it to generate a list, like give me 10 names around sort of a healthy brand of popcorn-based chip. And then you had to kind of talk to it a lot. Like you would say, like, these are too serious, or these are too wonky, or you're using the word popcorn too much. Like, think about it outside the box a little bit. So in those moments, we really had to push it, because you're looking for like something that's pretty tight, like a really 2-word, simple, pithy phrase that you're going to use to sell a product. It struggled a little bit with that. Like, it didn't understand, I think it feels like it has to use the full word popcorn, or it has to use the full word chip everywhere. And so it doesn't quite have the ability to sort of think about it non-intuitively. Like, what is a way that, a human might think about this? So that gave me hope.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and if you look at how these models are built, that makes perfect sense. They're trained on a lot of material, and coming up with something really creative that hasn't been done before is not the strength of these systems. It's to really synthesize a lot of other materials into one place, which is really kind of their training.
Yeah, I think if you were to ask it to come up with the name of a shoe company or a sneaker company, it would never come up with the name Nike. It would come up with, like Happy Shoes or something like that. And so it doesn't know quite how to be, an advanced, experienced marketer, but it knows enough that it gives you some ideas that you can build from.
I love that. I think that makes perfect sense. Okay, we're right at the edge of our time today. John, final question. What is the best way to really learn and adapt AI into our own workplaces? If I want to become more educated and more learned about the system and the subject and really just dive in, what are some resources and opportunities or ideas for people to educate themselves and really dive into the world of AI?
So I don't know if I can answer that fully, but I will say we learn the most when we actually try and apply it to consumer-facing solutions. Because, we have Slack channels with tons and tons of examples of really cool stuff that people are doing with AI out in the world. But when we actually say to ourselves, well, what can I use it for? It comes down to some pretty basic stuff. Like, you can use it for SEO on headlines. You can use it to summarize some stories. We use it to do some basic image manipulation. But, we've talked a lot about, hey, can we actually make, an AI generated video to create sort of an office problem solving scenario that and it doesn't work very well. And so when you force yourself to try and apply it to an actual real use case, that's when you realize A, what it can't do, and B, that this is going to be harder than you think. Like, it's going to actually take a while to get to some place where you can use it. We've done a lot of publishing around this. I don't want to plug ourselves, but we published books by people like Kareem Lakhani, who are talking about the future of AI all the time. So I'll encourage you to go purchase a few books, and I'll leave it there.
I love it. That's perfect. Well, John, this has been a great discussion. I love all the information and insights. If anyone wants to further the conversation and reach out online, how and where can they find you?
I have a website, and I think my email is still on the website. So I think it's just johncorpix.com. They can find my email there. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy to sort of respond to questions on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, John, again, thanks for your time today.
Sure thing, Ben. Thanks for having me on. I had a great time.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.